Imagine a devil fruit so broken that Oda just said, yeah, maybe not in the main storyline. Well, I've got a whole list of them for you as we're gonna go through every single non-canon devil fruit in One Piece. Because some of these are just beyond busted, and when a friend recently reminded me just how stupidly powerful Uta's devil fruit actually is, I knew I just had to make this entire video because check this out. In One Piece Film Red, we saw the insane powers of the Uta Uta no Mi, also known as the Sing Sing fruit. And yes, by the way, her name is the same as the name of the devil fruit. Can you imagine if we had a Luffy Luffy no Mi? Did Nika have the Nika Nika no Mi? Anyways, this devil fruit traps anyone who hears her sing inside an alternate dream dimension. You don't even need to fight her. If you can hear her, you've already lost. And once you're inside her dream world, she's basically a god and is able to manipulate reality and even summon Tot Musica, the literal demon of music destruction. Something very similar, Oda has said, by the way, will appear in the main storyline too. And just imagine if Uta was around in the real story with her devil fruit. I mean, honestly, with this power, you'd be Yonko level minimum because whole fleets could just vanish mid-song just like that. Shanks wouldn't even need to lift a sword, just drop the mic and let his daughter end the entire Summit War. Thank God this one stayed in the movies for now, because if this actually hit canon, the power scale would collapse harder than Marineford, because technically, yes, Uta is a canon character, but her powers, at least for now, are not. And from singing, let's now go to a fruit that's all about mega sound, because in the first movie, we were introduced to the Scream fruit. Now, this Paramecia devil fruit is basically what happens when Oda lets someone cosplay as Goku for a day, because this fruit turns sound into raw firepower. The user can unleash these unreal concentrated blasts of sound waves like energy beams. Yeah, like actual sound lasers. And Eldorado is the guy who ate this fruit, and he used it to shoot out Goku-style ki blasts and blow up ships like he was just farming bounties for XP at this point. The thing is though, Eldorado himself wasn't exactly the most impressive guy. He had a god tier ability, but the combat IQ of a mid-level East Blue pirate, kinda similar to Apu and his very broken music fruit abilities, I think. But imagine if someone like, I don't know, Katakuri or Kizaru got their hands on this type of devil fruit, someone who, you know, actually knows how to fight at high speed and precision, well, they'd be leveling entire islands with sound alone. And while this next fruit isn't as obviously destructive, it actually feels way too good to be just a non-canon devil fruit. The More fruit from the 3 Days 2 Year special movie is a Paramecia eaten by Burn the World, a former level 6 Impel Down prisoner who could amplify the size or speed of anything that he touched. We're talking ships, cannonballs, even his own attacks. He can boost them all to truly insane levels. It's the kind of power that sounds pretty simple at first until you really think about what it can actually do. Like if someone, say, like Zoro, right, had this fruit, he could just swing a sword slash that moves 10 times faster and cuts through entire fleets even better than he already can at this point. The fruit basically turns any physical style fighter into a hyper boosted, over leveled melee god. After seeing how the More fruit turns raw power into math, we jump straight into something way stickier. The Candy fruit from One Piece Movie 4 Dead End Adventure is a Logia fruit that lets the main villain Gaspar transform into and control candy syrup. It's one of those fruits that sound kind of silly until you realize how early this appeared in the timeline, right? Like at this point, the only Logia fruits we've ever seen were Smoker and Crocodile. So watching someone melt into syrup and trap enemies in goo was actually pretty wild. Still, the power itself sits somewhere between hilarious and disgusting. Kind of like Perospero's Lick fruit, which is basically a candy Paramecia. Imagine if Big Mom had this instead of her soul powers, whole Kick Island would be completely edible. She'd be the Yonko of cavities, even more than she already is. Gaspard might not have been a major threat itself, but the concept of a candy Logia fruit definitely is pretty cool, even if it doesn't fit the general themes of Logia as being natural elements, so I'm pretty glad we got to see this in the movie. And while the Candy fruit might have been very memorable, it actually wasn't the first Logia fruit we saw in a One Piece movie, because that honor goes to the Liquid fruit from Clockwork Island Adventure. This fruit was eaten by a character called Honey Queen, and it let her transform and control a strange water-like liquid that was also somehow sticky, which is kind of sus and also hilarious to me. Like, why call it the liquid fruit? I don't know, if there was only like some natural liquid sticky substance that would go with a character named Honey Queen. I can't think of anything. Maybe Oda wanted to save the honey fruit for the main storyline, which is something that has happened before. They always check non-canon fruit ideas with Oda, just in case he wants to actually save that one for the main storyline. That has happened. On paper, this fruit does sound terrifying, but in practice, it was actually kind of just janky. Like, the fruit was weak to cold, and Honey Queen ended up getting completely outplayed by Nami, who literally sealed her inside a jar. Props to Nami for catching a Logia fruit user, like she's out here completing the Pokedex, by the way. Still, the Toro no Mi was an early experiment that showed how wild Logia fruit ideas could actually get. And honestly, from here on out, the movies just keep on pushing the limits of what devil fruits can actually do. Honey Queen wasn't actually the only fruit user in Clockwork Island Adventure, and she wasn't even the main villain, because that title goes to Bear King, who ate, and yes, that's the real name, the hard heart fruit. Paramecia that lets him harden and heat up his body. Kinda shocked this isn't a bear fruit since he is the literal Bear King, but oh well, you know, what can you do? It's a straightforward but solidly powerful devil fruit, right? Like Bear King could turn his body into an unbreakable furnace, shrug off attacks, and burn anyone dumb enough to get too close to him. Now, compared to some of the much wilder devil fruits in movies, this one feels fairly simple, but in combat, it's still very brutal. Luffy and Nami had to rely on brains and strategy rather than just on brute force in order to handle him, and that's usually not Luffy's get-to move, right? So pretty interesting to see. Now, the Kachi no Mi proves that sometimes, though, Oda actually lets movies play around with fruits that he does actually want to put in the story later. Because you probably realize that the Kachi no Mi is very similar to other heat-related fruits we've seen, like, for example, Oven's Heat fruit. Next up, though, we've got the Bird fruit model Eagle from the Straw Hat Chase movie. Can we run that clip from Scrubs where he goes like, Eagle! Eagle!
Yeah, enough?
Thanks. Now, this is a Zoan eaten by Buzz, a bulldog that lets him transform into an eagle or a hybrid eagle-bulldog form. That's right, a bulldog with wings and talons. I don't know if this is the most brilliant or the most dumb Zoan ever, but I personally really love it. Though it is certainly not as elegant as Pierre, the horse-bird Pegasus hybrid. Can't have this level of aura no matter how hard you try. Now, it comes with all the standard Zoan perks, of course, multiple transformations, buff physical abilities, and better combat versatility. What actually makes it stand out the most to me that it's somehow the only non-canon Zoan fruit that is not mythical. So while it doesn't have fancy magical powers, Buzz is a pure physical monster and just fun to look at. Now, after a flying bulldog, it's of course time to get shiny, correct. The gold fruit from film Gold is a Paramecia eaten by Guild, not Gold, Tesoro, Loki, the best movie villain I think, just saying personally. This fruit lets him manipulate gold at will, can shape it, control it, and use it as a weapon or as an armor. He cannot create gold though, so his strength depends entirely on how much is around him. But good thing that he decked out his entire floating casino in gold and even constantly rained down gold flecks so that he'd be quite literally a god, at least while he's on his ship. And what can I say? This one is just chef's kiss. It's flashy, thematic, Tesoro used it to make himself feel like a real powerful threat. Gold spikes, golden walls, golden fists. The guy turned the entire city into his personal weapon playground. I honestly wouldn't be too shocked if Oda decided to actually reuse a similar idea later on in the story, maybe with another mineral. And while we're talking about the top tier movie fruits, by the way, the Clank fruit from film Stampede might just take the crown of all of them, because this Paramecia was eaten by Douglas Bullet, a former Roger pirate. Loki may be the worst movie villain, just saying, but the fruit lets him disassemble and reassemble objects at will, so you can see that pile of junk over there. Well, Bullet can combine everything into some mega construct. And the really insane part is how Bullet actually uses it. He can create these massive, intricate mechanical creations on the fly, turning ordinary debris into fully functional war machines. Honestly, if someone like Frankie had this fruit in the main story, he would be absolutely unstoppable. It's like the ultimate combination of creativity and raw power. After seeing Bullet turn junk into mechanical masterpieces, let's switch gears to something a little bit Snackier. The color fruit from the Heart of Gold movie is a paramecia eaten by Psycho P, and it lets him paint camouflage on people or objects, making them nearly invisible. Also, I just realized I said snackier when of course I meant to say sneakier. That makes a lot more sense. Sorry about that. So, being invisible makes you sneaky, and it's basically a stealth fighter's dream, right? The fruit does have its limitations though. Also, I hear Gojo meowing. Let me quickly let him in, sorry. Just want to go outside again in just a second. Where was I? Oh, right, the color fruit. This fruit has some limitations. Anyone with strong observation haki can still sense the hidden person, so it's not invincible. Honestly, in a way, it feels like a slightly weaker version of Absalom's old Clear fruit, but the concept is still solid. And this feels like exactly the kind of sneaky tactical fruit a CP0 agent could have had in the canon story, right? Like, please someone give my boy Kaku here this sneaky chameleon fruit instead of the wacky giraffe. Though I've kind of grown to love the giraffe.
For the last time, giraffes are awesome. I love giraffes.
Let's stick with the giraffe, it's kind of nice. Now, sticking with Heart of Gold though, the chain fruit is a paramecia eaten by Mad Treasure that lets him grow and control chains all over his body. This Kurapika wannabe can use them to hit, trap, stab, or even make full-on chain armor. Honestly, pretty impressive visually and makes for some pretty awesome combat choreography, even though Gojo doesn't look too impressed. Wait, what does he look? Anyways, that said, it's pretty similar to other fruits in the main story, like Doflamingo's string fruit already does something very similar with string, so the chain concept doesn't feel exactly groundbreaking, I guess. Still, it's a very cool twist to see chains used in a slightly more brute force, flexible way, and it does fit Mad Treasure style perfectly. Now, this next fruit takes unique ideas to the next level, and the cube fruit is one of the reasons I actually wanted to make this video to begin with, because this fruit is a paramecia eaten by Gairam in the 3 days 2 year special, and it lets him slice anything he touches into cubes and then manipulate those cubes however he wants. Which sounds kind of insane. I mean, he can build massive cube towers, create shifting mazes, or compress air and people into perfect little blocks. It's just basically the Minecraft fruit, I guess, now that I think about it. And it's one of those powers that looks simple at first, but gets kind of scarier the more you really think about the implications, right? Like, people can break free if they've got strong enough willpower, kind of like how strong haki can negate some devil fruit powers, but it's still a bit of a nightmare for anyone who's not mentally tough or just a regular person. The geometric visuals are surprisingly striking, and the whole idea of turning enemies into Rubik's cubes or, you know, like Minecraft blocks mid-fight is hilariously tactical and weirdly satisfying. Can I say that? Am I the only one thinking that? Yes? Alright, let's move on, because we've got one of the most broken movie powers ever next. Let's talk about the return fruit eaten by Ain in Film Z. Now, this paramecia lets her revert anything that she touches by 12 years in age, whether it's a person, a weapon, or, yes, even a volcano. She can quite literally punch lava back into magma. Now go stack this effect a couple of times and you can de-age someone out of existence entirely. The power is very creative, absolutely terrifying, and thematically fits Ain's vibe pretty good. I mean, it's got one of the coolest visual motives in the movies as well, with those pink energy spheres, right? And honestly, this fruit kind of feels like something Oda could have easily slipped into the canon, though maybe it's just way too powerful. You want to go outside now? Outside? Okay. Okay. You want to say hi at least? You want to say hi? Hello. Okay. Bye-bye. Now, keeping it in Film Z, we've got the Grow fruit, a paramecia used by Bins that's basically a verse version of Aramaki's Forest Logia fruit. Like, this one does accelerate plant growth and lets the user control vegetation around them. The catch, though, is that there needs to be plants nearby to use it effectively, but when there are, the results are admittedly quite powerful. You can make giant vines that crush ships or trap marines in seconds. And it's actually somehow not the only plant-based fruit introduced in the movie, because next we have the mushroom fruit, a paramecia eaten by Mashuru Wapol from the episode of Chopper movie. Yeah, that's right, I said Wapol, but this time it's actually Wapol's brother. Now this fruit, instead of getting him high the entire time, actually gives him control over poisonous spores, kind of like how Magellan can control venom. And this lets Mashuru spread deadly toxins through the air, fire them like bullets, or even create clones made entirely of spores, which, why? But I guess. And fire can burn through the poison clouds, but that's about the only reliable counter there is. And what's extra wild is that in the movies, Mashuru gets freaking eaten by his brother, and his powers then merge with Wapol's, creating this freaky brotherly fusion that technically lets Wapol control 2 devil fruits at once. What? Guess we've got to take Blackbeard's only person with 2 devil fruits title away now? What happens if Wapol eats someone with a devil fruit power in the main canon story? Now, sliding back over to Film Gold here, the phase fruit is a paramecia eaten by Tanaka that lets him phase through solid objects. He can dive into walls, floors, or even metal surfaces like it's nothing, and on top of that, he can share his intangibility with others or even objects. So yeah, he can just make your whole squad vanish into the walls like ghosts. He's not invincible, of course. Living things can still hit him, but the fact that he can just disappear mid-attack is kind of broken, honestly. If we're really talking about truly overpowered fruits from Film Gold, Baccarat's Luck fruit might just be the peak of it, because this paramecia lets her steal a person's luck just by touching them, turning herself into a walking good fortune magnet while her victim's life falls apart instantly. And the unluckiness is actually quite brutal as well. People trip, miss shots, or get flattened by random debris like it's Final Destination, like very dark stuff. Of course, the stolen luck is temporary and fades once she's beaten, but still, it's one of the most busted hacks powers that we have ever seen in One Piece ever. I kind of really love this power because it's creative, stylish, and perfectly fits the casino theme of the entire movie. Plus, just imagine if someone in the canon story had this fruit, like if Blackbeard gets it, Luffy would probably faceplant into his own attack mid-fight all the time. Alright, but now that we've wrapped up all the movie-exclusive devil fruits, we're of course far from done, because it's now time to head into a totally different corner of the One Piece multiverse, the stage plays. Yeah, that's the thing. And I'll be honest, I've never even heard of most of these plays, even though they are insanely popular here in Japan where I live. I really gotta go to one of these. But let me warn you by saying that things get weirdly creative since there are live shows or VR experiences that had to make the fruits really flashy, thematic, or just visually fun for the live crowd. First of these is the metal fruit from the One Piece dramatic stage, a full 3D holographic VR play. This paramecia was eaten by Gradle and lets him control liquid metal, which already sounds like something straight out of Terminator 2, right? Like he can shape it however he wants and even create metal clones of other people to fight for him. It's just one of these powers that feels way more sci-fi than typical One Piece stuff, but it really fits a VR style show, right? Going from VR to real-world explosions, the plasma fruit shows up in the One Piece premiere show, the live performance series at Universal Studios Japan. Now this fruit is eaten by a character named Smash, though I do gotta say, pass, and that was such a bad joke. And while its exact type isn't confirmed, it does look very much like a Logia since it allows him to become and control plasma. And part of me is like, really? They save the hardest devil fruits to recreate in real life and then take them for stage plays? I guess, but yeah, let's be honest, this Logia is legitimately way cooler than half the canon Logia fruits we have gotten in One Piece, so kind of a shame we didn't see it, in One Piece itself. Next up though, from the One Piece live attraction Phantom stage play, we've got the Vision fruit, and this paramecia was eaten by Anne, and it lets her create light phantoms of people and objects. Just kind of busted in its own way, but these illusions can also mimic the original powers or abilities of these people to a certain degree as well. It's kind of a super visual fruit, which makes a lot of sense, right, for a stage show. So you can really imagine all the lighting tricks and clone fights that they could pull off with that. Really, really creative. There's one even cooler trick you can pull off though, and that's supporting the channel by joining the Patreon. Seriously, if you want access to our artwork, done. How about early manga chapter reactions? You got it. Community discussions, polls, bonus videos, your name in every video at the end. You can have all of that and much more by helping us out and join the squad with the link in the description below. With that being said, and the bills being paid, and shout out to everyone who already does that, back to the video. Because we gotta keep things moving with the burner fruit featured in the One Piece premiere show in 2018, and that was eaten by Bounty, and this paramecia fruit lets him turn his jealousy into literal heat and flames. Plus, let's be real, burning with jealousy is kind of like a prime Sanji fruit if I've ever seen one, so probably should give that to Sanji in a real storyline. Then another heat fruit is the Heat Wave fruit from the premiere show 2016, eaten by a character called Wilder. It's kind of just like it sounds, a fruit that lets the user generate powerful heat waves. Which honestly generally might explain why summers get so crazy here in Japan. I mean, like, I'm dying. Like, from the time of June to October almost, like, 4 months are completely useless here. Anyways, let's move on. Because it looks like the One Piece premiere shows are the gift that keep on giving for non-canon devil fruits, and the 2019 show introduces us to the base fruit. Not sure why it's called that, but it's a paramecia eaten by Balzac, I think is how you pronounce this guy, that lets him turn anything he touches into a bomb. Not a ball sack. I said it. It's basically the inverse of Mr. Five's Bomu Bomu no Mi, right? Full-on Gambit mode. Instead, though, of his own body being explosive, anything that he touches becomes explosive instead. Now, simple but insanely deadly. Imagine shaking this guy's hand and realizing too late that your arm is now actually ticking because you touched the ball sack. Anyways, next up from the premiere show 2022 is one of the more abstract powers out there, the tuning fruit eaten by Yehudi. And this sounds like a fruit that would give him perfect pitch and allow him to join Uta's band. No. Turns out that this paramecia turns him into a tuning human, meaning that he can literally adjust the power levels of people or the environment around him. Want to make a volcano erupt faster? Easy. Want to weaken someone's haki mid-battle? Also done. And the effect can be washed off with water, but it's still absurdly broken. This ability is one balancing patch away from rewriting the entire power system of One Piece altogether. Now this next fruit is both hilarious and horrifying at the same time somehow, because the delivery fruit was eaten by Price in the premiere show 2018, which turns its user into a delivery human, meaning that anyone that they touch has to deliver Amazon packages until they die. Actually, it means that they can deliver anything to anyone, a punch, a bullet, or, yes, even a virus. This was 2018 before the pandemic, I guess. Doesn't matter, it gets sent right to the target. They can even deliver things to themselves, like someone's heart, which is basically Amazon Prime the devil fruit, but instead of next day, it's next second delivery, which I guess Amazon has to step up their game, and also Jeff Bezos probably wants your heart delivered to him anyway, so this might be coming next year. Not sponsored, and probably never will be now. Now, then we have the Smelt fruit, which is a fruit so popular, they decided to use it twice. It first appeared in the premiere show 2013 with Lambor Bikini. Again, that's a real name, Lambor Bikini, who could heat up metal and generate steam. I wonder where that name comes from. And later it was then used again in the Silver Mine anime arc with Bill. Not as cool a name, Bill. And Bill could do a little bit more with the fruit. He could literally become a blast furnace with the ability to consume ore, produce weapons, and even fuse metal in his own body. It's got a ton of visual potential, and both versions do look pretty cool, but it's kind of funny how hard they doubled down on it with this. But let's now up ahead to a more recent fruit introduced from the premiere show 2024. This is the homing fruit, a paramecia eaten by a man with the same name as the fruit, Humming. And no, this is not actually Doflamingo's father come back to life and turned evil. This fruit lets him make projectiles home in on the target's location. He doesn't even have to touch them, just fires and forgets about it. It's basically One Piece's version of an aimbot, I guess. A little bit similar to Vanderdecken's devil fruit, except this one can target places instead of people too. Like, if Usopp had this, he would never miss again. Not that Usopp ever misses, right? Then we also have the premiere show 2015 with its, let's call it questionable devil fruit, because this show introduced a fruit and the best translation that I can make for it is the fall in love fruit, I guess. And just like it sounds, this fruit is a paramecia eaten by Bonbon that turns him into an aphrodisiac human. His power is just to make people fall hopelessly in love with him or lust with him by shouting whore love revolution and firing off a ray of light. It doesn't work on people who already have what they love most, but still, yikes. It's kind of like Boa Hancock's fruit if it was run through a dating sim and without the whole turning into stone thing. It's a funny concept, but thank God this one isn't canon, I guess. Sanji would trade both his legs to get his hands on that fruit, I guarantee it. Next up, we've got the Net fruit from the premiere show 2014, eaten by Bildy. I swear these names get worse and worse. This power, though, is pretty short and sweet. It lets you turn people into copies of others, so yeah, you could literally turn Helmeppo into Kaido, which sounds like a twisted awakening of Bon Clay's clone fruit, I guess. And I hope you're ready for some repeats, because the Think Thing fruit from the premiere show 2016 was eaten by Poke and lets the user make clones of themselves or anyone or anything else, so yeah, another clone fruit. There's a bunch of these. Then we have the Marionette fruit from premiere show 2023, which was eaten by Van Vendler. Dude, the name's killing me. Also goes for the kind of illusion vibe, but leans into creating copies of real people. As long as the user knows someone's name and has seen them, they can make controllable clones. Yet, yay, another paramecia with duplication powers, rounding out what might be the most overused gimmick in all the stage plays together. Hey, next up is the Copy fruit from premiere show 2012, eaten by Chameleone, I guess? I don't know, it sounds like a pizza. This paramecia allows the user to copy other people's abilities after seeing them once. So it's basically Kakashi from Naruto. This power takes focus to use properly though, but come on, that's just beyond broken. You basically be a walking compilation of every devil fruit in existence. This sounds like a devil fruit that if you ask like some kid, right, like, oh, what devil fruit power do you want? Like, oh, I want to copy every other fruit. Well, someone made it, and it's a non-canon fruit. And I hope you're starting to get a sense how surprised I was how many devil fruits are actually coming from the premiere show. It's basically a guarantee that you'll get a new devil fruit if you go to the show each single year. I am very seriously considering hosting a Ohara team field trip to one of these someday, but we're still not done somehow, because now we have the Mabo no Mi from the premiere show 2024, and this is a paramecia eaten by Fanto that lets him create illusions based on people's memories. And this is one of these powers that's a little bit less flashy in combat, but terrifying in psychological warfare. Imagine seeing a dead crewmate walking towards you mid-battlefield. Pure nightmare fuel. But let's escape from the premiere shows now for a moment, because there's the magic fruit from Lucy and Lucy Coliseum, the battle, eaten by Inchikin. This paramecia basically gives him straight up stage magician powers like illusions, hypnosis, vanishing acts, the whole showbiz package basically. It's pretty fun and great for a stage play, but sounds really similar to other play fruits we've already seen, I think. And then we got the Nibi no Mi, or the dark grapefruit from the premiere show 2021, eaten by Cardia. And this fruit lets the user control will-o'-the-wisps, which are these eerie flame spirits, but it gets even creepier, because if wisps touch a memento of a deceased person, they can take on that person's appearance and abilities. So you guessed it, it's another cloning fruit, ladies and gentlemen, just a little bit weaker. And there's also the Nitro fruit, a paramecia eaten by Burst from the premiere show 2015 that basically turns you into Bakugo from My Hero Academia. This guy literally sweats nitroglycerine that detonates on impact. He's a walking, unstable bomb, and apparently he even has a nitroglycerin dragon form, I guess, for some reason. Kinda sounds like something Mr. Five and Caesar Clown would cook up together, maybe. And then we have one of the most twisted, evil devil fruits ever created, and it comes from the premiere show 2021. This is the Nori no Mi, which can also be called the dance fruit, eaten by Hertz. I don't know if it's German or not. The paramecia here lets the user fire off beams, not beans. It allows to fire off beams that force people to dance uncontrollably. Oh my god, we can do an outtakes of this video. This paramecia lets the user fire off beams that force people to dance uncontrollably, even to the point of exhaustion or death. Kind of took a dark twist there at the end. It's kind of equal parts hilarious and horrifying, like a cursed version of Just Dance. Brookwood, 100% roast someone using this fruit. Now let's shake off the bad dance vibes here and get to something a little bit more silly. The next fruit is the Chubby Chubby fruit, and it was eaten by Nero in the 2017 premiere show. And this paramecia ability lets the user, wait for it, well yeah, control body fat. No joke. The user can control both their own and other people's body fat so they can inflate enemies into helpless blobs, literally making them too heavy to move or fight. The America treatment. Sorry. The effect can thankfully be reversed through exercise or a super high metabolism, or Ozempic, I guess. Basically means that Luffy would hard counter this fruit just by existing. And then we have Snitcher from the 2025 premiere show, who wields the absolute menace of a fruit, the reverse fruit. This power lets the user reverse motion, attacks, and even energy flow. Basically a localized version of time control, which puts it in the same rare category as Toki's Time Devil fruit and Ain's Return fruit, with some time-related abilities, which already makes it insanely powerful. Then we have the Compress fruit, which was eaten by Bolster from the 2024 premiere show, and this ability lets the user compress anything into a smaller, more portable form. We're talking bombs, air, debris, all of it can be shrunk down to an easy to carry size. They can even release compressed air in shockwaves, yes, very similar to Kuma's Ursa's shock, and this fruit has massive battlefield potential and could easily fit into canon as a Marine Vice Admiral power or even a Cypher Pole assassin ability. And then, to finally finish off the stage play so we can finally move on to another category, we have the Shoot fruit, and this fruit was eaten by Bad One Gracie, great name, who takes the term armed and dangerous a little bit too literally because his fruit turns anything into a gun. Rocks are guns, chairs become guns, trees become guns, other people become guns. Anything can be changed into guns that Gracie can then fire. Kinda like an external version of Baby Five's fruit, really. The only major downside is that his hands are permanently changed into firearms. But the awakened form lets him turn entire environments into weapons. Fun fact here, this is the only known awakened non-canon devil fruit, and of course it has to be such a ridiculous power like this. Alright, now that we've covered the premiere shows and the other stage play madness here, let's quickly move on into another corner of the One Piece multiverse, the video game and spin-off fruits. These are the abilities that were cooked up for story modes, boss fights, and crossover events, so naturally they range from "that's actually quite brilliant" all the way to "what were they smoking in the QA testing at that point?" Starting with a piece of One Piece media I shamelessly have to admit I've never heard of before, let me introduce you to the Fisher X One Piece crossover, which is a manga series collab between One Piece and the Fisher Comedy Group, who came together to make a manga series called Search for the Seven Treasures, apparently. And naturally, as you'd expect, this thing is wild with so many wacky stories, characters, and of course, a lot of crazy devil fruits. I'm honestly very excited to get away from all the clone fruits in the stage play section, so let's hit some new, fresh, exciting fruits. The first of which is the Pike Pike no Mi, a paramecia eaten by Piketan that lets him turn people into clones of himself. What? God damn it, clones again. Alright. Fine. This one basically is a reverse version of Bonclay's Mane Mane no Mi, except instead of becoming you, it makes you become, well, him. And to keep things wild in the Fisherverse, let me introduce you to the character fruit. This fruit is a paramecia eaten by Lip Shark in Fisher's X One Piece spin-off manga too, and this one lets the user literally merge with other people. A little bit similar to Charlotte Nushi's Pile Pile fruit or Walpole's Munch Munch fruit, but this one sounds a lot creepier. Imagine a villain who just absorbs your body and your powers like it's no big deal. Basically, if Majin Buu was in One Piece, I guess. And sticking with the Fisher crossover, this next fruit is for all of you JRPG fans out there. This fruit is the Game fruit eaten by Dama's tablets. Yes, the actual tablet itself. And it lets the user download people into a video game world where they can boost or nerf their stats at will. It's basically the Isekai fruit if you want to. Like, imagine fighting this guy and suddenly getting hit with a
all stats down debuff, like kind of wild.
And since we're already halfway there, let's now dive into the video game world with a fruit from the game One Piece Unlimited World Red. The titles, again, love it. In this game, we have the literal definition of horror, the mythical Zoan bad fruit model vampire. That's right, Dracula is in One Piece. This fruit was eaten by Patrick Redfield, aka Red the Aloof, and it lets him transform into a full-on vampire. He gets flight, teleportation, invisibility, and the ability to drain or return life force. He's straight up basically immortal as long as there's life nearby to feed on. Of course, he's got the fangs, just like Stussy with the real bad fruit in One Piece, and honestly, if Gecko Moria had snagged this one instead of the Kage no Mi, he'd probably be ruling the Grand Line at this point too. Then also from the game Unlimited World Red, we have the dog fruit model Bakedanuki, and this fruit was eaten by a character named Pato, who is a pen. Yes, a literal pen that became a magical tanuki. So in the manga, we've had a pot eat a tanuki fruit, and now a pen eating a tanuki yokai fruit. It is adorable, and it fits perfectly in the weird but wholesome side of the One Piece spin-offs, but weird, I still have to say. And from a pen, let's now go to a fruit that turns you into paper. Yeah, you heard me right. The paper fruit, which is a Logia from the 2002 game One Piece Great Hidden Treasure of the Nanatsu Islands. Again, these titles, insane. It was eaten by a character called Simon, and it allows the user to transform into paper. Now, look, I think we all know that Logias are supposed to be mainly elements, but this was way early in One Piece, so I do think we give them a pass for, using paper for a Logia. And honestly, paper sounds lame, but it's also not just any old paper. I'm talking about razor-sharp, flying symbol-charged paper that can explode, paralyze, poison, or heal, and worst of all, probably also give you paper cuts. Ugh. It's ridiculously overpowered, but that's what makes it perfect for a video game boss fight, I think. I gotta say, there's probably no stranger spin-off devil fruit in general than this next one, because back in 2017, there was a special art exhibit celebrating One Piece's 20th anniversary, and part of the exhibit was a spin-off story told through art styles, and one of them introduced the bird fruit model Nue, which is a mythical Zoan eaten by the main character of the spin-off story, Toratsugu. Which, all of that sounds already like Jujutsu Kaisen, right? It allows him to transform into Nue, a Japanese yokai chimera-like creature with the face of a monkey, body of a tiger, tail of a snake, and in general, already a wild combo, but it totally fits the Wano aesthetic that the story took place in. And honestly, if this had shown up in canon, it would have been one of the coolest Zoan fruits ever. It's like Oda looked at Kaido's dragon form and said, yeah, but what if we added in more animals? Like, would that be fun? That's what that fruit is. The next fruit gets real dark, real fast though, because the dissolve fruit is a paramecia eaten by Arthur Baka in the One Piece law novel. And I kid you not, this fruit turns the user into a dissolving human able to melt anything, including themselves, into liquid. But here's the really wild part, they can even dissolve abstract things like a person's love and affection, which means that Baka can dissolve their resistance to him, which lets him basically control people. And to make things even worse, if it's not reversed, this can even kill Baka's target. Like, I know they have to make spin-off villains powerful, but this one seems a little bit too busted to even be fair. My god. So from now one of the most broken fruits, let's talk about one that we know the least about, because the card fruit is a paramecia that grants One Piece card magic, and that's kind of all we know. Like, don't know anything about its powers at all, but it is an official non-canon fruit that was introduced with a mascot called Card-kun at the One Piece Card Game Festa 2024. And honestly, it's kind of amazing. A card-based devil fruit that's literally Magic the Gathering meets One Piece, and I'm 100% for it. Though I guess it's One Piece the card game meets One Piece, but not officially, but I don't know. It's cool promotion. I love trading cards. I'll take it. Here's an Ugin from a different video. Next up in the video games here, though, we have the grab fruit eaten by Adio Suerte. I don't know if that's a Spanish name or not, but I pronounce it that way, in One Piece Odyssey. And this paramecia lets the user summon massive gauntlets made of light that can grab and manipulate anything except themselves. Aww. The fruit can also create shields of light, absorb information of anything in its grasp, and even take control of objects that it touches too. In the game, Suerte tried to take control of a device on the same power level as the ancient weapon, so yeah, the fruit has got a lot going for it, and it's got that tech meets magic vibe that I personally actually quite love. And now we're just gonna go full Nightmare Realm with the Sleep fruit, because this fruit was eaten by Noko in the 2003 Ocean's Dream game, and it lets the user make people fall asleep and trap them inside a dream world, kinda like Uta's fruit too. And once they're in, Noko can steal his victims' memories to power up, and he can even control people's actions inside their dreams. The only real weakness is that when Noko gets hit, those stolen memories literally fall out. It's actually kinda crazy they dropped one of the craziest devil fruits ever made in a game like over 20 years ago. I bet Oda wishes that he still had this fruit to use for free in the main story, but it's gone now. It's a pretty cool one. And rounding out the video game section of our video, we've got the mini fruit eaten by Blyu, I think is how you pronounce that name, who is the main antagonist of the game One Piece Round the Land. And this fruit is a paramecia that lets the user shrink themselves down to just 5 millimeters tall while somehow keeping their full physical strength. Basically, Ant-Man meets One Piece. It's a ridiculous visual. Imagine Luffy getting punched across the face by someone smaller than his fingernail and still flying through the wall. Tiny but mighty, doesn't even begin to cover it. Again, would be a pretty fun one for the actual story. Funnily enough, this is also one of the rare fruits that was eaten by 2 different people, because Lily and Stamek also used this fruit in the Z's Ambition anime filler arc. Which, whoops, is a perfect segue, because we're officially now sailing out of the game world and into the anime filler only devil fruits, and these are the ones that popped up in filler arcs or side stories. And while some are weirdly creative, others kind of feel like they were made 5 minutes before the episode aired just to have something, so let's dive in, you'll see what I mean. A prime example, I think, is the Net fruit eaten by Largo in the special anime episode 427 called Little East Blue. This paramecia fruit lets him produce sticky nets that can change properties based on what he eats, like down a pot of boiling water and he can make a superheated net, chomp down on some metal and he can produce a heavy-duty steel net. But Largo doesn't get a free pass with what he eats like Wapol and his fruit, so boiling water still burns him, and eating metal would seriously mess up his digestive system. Like, he needs to eat screws, like, he needs to deal with that stuff, is what my point is, right? He can turn himself into a net though, which is kinda wild and borderline Logia behavior. Maybe it's a special paramecia like Katakuri. My point is, weird. I think very, very weird. Next up, we have the Hot fruit eaten by Donachino in episode 326 of the anime filler Ice Hunter arc here, which I personally really loved when I was first watching One Piece. Kinda sad that that one wasn't canon. This paramecia lets the user generate extreme heat, which means that he can melt through metal and produce steam clouds hot enough to cook an entire ship's deck. And the heat output even scales with his emotions, which is kind of both funny and terrifying. It's basically like the 3 other non-canon heat fruits we've already had, so I think we can move on. Because way back in the very first anime filler arc, we were introduced to Apis and her devil fruit, the Whisper fruit. This one's really just pure wholesome energy, because it allows the user to talk telepathically with animals, as we saw when Apis chatted with her dragon buddy, Ryu. It's one of the few fruits with 0 offensive capabilities, but it's got that mystical voice of all things vibe that Oda then later used for Luffy and Momo. It's really adorable, but Chopper basically already has this power on speed dial, so maybe not that relevant. Let's stay in the Warship Island arc, which by the way is this island right here, where we also meet another non-canon devil fruit with the Sickle fruit eaten by Eric. Now this one's a paramecia that lets the user extend their fingernails into razor-sharp talons, but you can also fire slicing gusts of air, kind of like mini flying slashes like Kaido does. It's honestly not a bad concept, it's just pretty mid, I think. So instead, next up is honestly one of the most hilarious fruits ever made, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the majestic, the ethereal roll fruit eaten by Aviron in the Silvermine arc, who is turned into a rail car human. This absolute gem of a paramecia lets the user turn their hands and feet into wheels, and come on, how can you not love this thing? And with these powers, Aviron can zip around at high speeds, but stopping is kind of the problem. It's a goofy concept, but surprisingly dangerous if you get hit by the human bowling ball, I guess. And what's even better is that there's actually already a character who likes to roll around as a train in Big Mom's crew. That's her son Diesel, and the best part is that these two share a voice actor. No kidding. Like, imagine being cast as the One Piece guy who likes to pretend to be a train. Too bad the role's gone. I'd take it. Then we also have the pet fruit eaten by Breed in the Caesar retrieval arc. This paramecia takes the cake for the most inhumane fruit in One Piece history because it allows Breed to create these red control collars that can be placed on people or animals, forcing them to obey his commands as long as they can hear him. Also unlocks the control thing's full potential, which is why he can even put one on himself to boost his own power. It's a pretty creepy idea, basically a mix between Sugar's mind control and Doflamingo's string control. Still, Breed's fruit proves that filler villains usually get some terrifyingly creative broken powers. So at this point, you now probably feel like you've already learned about every single devil fruit in One Piece ever, right? You're a certified devil fruit doctor. Well, I'm willing to bet there's still a ton of devil fruits you've forgotten even existed in the main story, like this mysterious fruit from the Enies Lobby arc that could come back and absolutely destroy Zoro in the current story. Or how about the fruit that nearly killed Robin in Dressrosa? Do you remember that one? Well, I've got you covered, because if you want to hear about every single canon devil fruit in One Piece, you can check out that video right here. It's even longer. As always, thanks for watching, and thanks to our Patreons, and I will see you in the next video.